This lesson is about the properties of algebra. So our objective is I know the properties of algebra. These will be the rules that we can use to simplify things and work with numbers in our algebraic class. Now, I'm going to talk about each of these in addition and using multiplication. The only exception to that is this last one. The distributive uses both addition and multiplication, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But let's talk about each of these. First of all, the commutative property. The commutative property, the root of it is to commute. Commute means to move, and so when we talk about this property, we're going to look at the numbers moving. Let's first start with addition. So with a plus b, if a and b are real numbers, to commute them means to have them move places, to swap. Okay, so that's the commutative property for addition. Multiplication is very similar. If a and b are real numbers and they're multiplied together, if you want to switch their order, you can do that, and it's the same exact value for that. Let's do the same thing with associative. Associative, the root is to associate. That means to group together. Here I'm going to use three real numbers. So if I've got my first two real numbers, a and b, grouped together, and then added to it outside of the grouping, another number, we'll call it c, you can regroup them and put different ones together. So I can regroup it to put the b and the c together if that's helpful for simplifying. We can do the same thing with multiplication. If a and b are grouped together and multiply, if we have a third number out here, we can regroup it and put the b and the c in the grouping together. Do that first if it helps us maybe to do the calculations quicker. Now, the inverse, that word means to undo. So when I talk about my additive inverse and my multiplicative inverse, they will undo those numbers to get rid of the variable in the problem. So as an example, if I've got a, to undo it, I add to it the opposite of a, and I get 0 as a result. So that means the opposite of a, we're talking about, say, 4, negative 4 is its opposite. If we're talking about negative 8, positive 8 is its opposite. If I add them together, they undo each other, and I end up with 0 as a result. Well, for multiplication, if I've got a as a number and I want its multiplicative inverse, that means what will undo it, I multiply by the reciprocal, 1 over it. And that would equal then 1, which would be the multiplicative identity. It would undo it to get that 1. So as an example, if this number is 10, its reciprocal will be 1/10. If this is 4/5, its reciprocal would be 5/4. So you work with the reciprocal to undo it. Now on identity, that idea of an identity is what would make it leave it alone. And what I mean by that is, if it's going to keep its identity, what would you add to it or multiply by it to leave it alone? So as an example, with a, if I add 0 to it, that leaves it alone and leaves it as that original number a. Notice it's just a different version of using this number up here. Well, over here, to get what I can do is use that same idea. The additive identity is 0, the multiplicative identity is 1. So if I take and multiply by 1, I end up with just a as a result. It leaves it alone. Closure, all it means is that the real numbers are closed in with these operations. If you're going to add two numbers together, you get a real number. If you multiply two real numbers together, you get a real number. That's what closure means. So if I take and I add together a plus b, I just know it is a real number. So all the rules that we use in these properties apply to the result of adding them together. And same thing with multiplication. If I multiply two real numbers together, it is also a real number. So the result will have all these rules and properties applied to it. Now lastly, distributive property involves both addition and multiplication. So be careful. Notice up here, all the operations are addition for associative. All of them for commutative are addition here. Here, all of them are multiplication. It kind of looks a little bit like the associative property, but the difference is, notice, I'm going to have a times, and in the parentheses is going to be addition. So I've got both multiplication and addition, so it's neither one of these. So be careful, you see it's different. Then when I see this, the rule is that you distribute it through. It goes to both of them. So the A gets distributed to the B, and then when there's addition in there, or subtraction, but A gets distributed to the C as well for the distributive property. So these properties are the rules we follow to simplify things in order to get final results when we're working within our real number system.